Welcome back to our channel, where we bring you the most exciting, heartbreaking, and explosive developments from the world of your favorite daytime dramas. Next week on Beyond the Gates, plot details from April 27th to May 1st, 2026 reveal Samantha will criticize her father, and Tomas's suspicions about Lynette and Haley haven't stopped. What will happen? Will the conflicts end? And will the family be torn apart? Let's dive in and find out. This content is for informational purposes only, and thanks to all of you who enjoy my content. The atmosphere within the sprawling confines of the Richardson estate is rapidly deteriorating into a suffocating pressure cooker of resentment and hidden agendas. What should be a sanctuary of familial trust has morphed into a battleground of clandestine desires and deeply entrenched double standards. The spark that ignites this impending inferno occurs in the quiet, shadowed corners of the home, where Jessica and Tyrell managed to carve out a fleeting, private sanctuary away from the prying eyes of the world. Their stolen moments are heavy with an intoxicating blend of passion and the dangerous thrill of the forbiddens. The air between them crackles with an intensity that threatens to consume them both, a desperate grasp at intimacy within a house that seemingly monitors every breath its inhabitants take. Yet, the fragile illusion of their secluded romance is violently shattered, not by a stranger, but by the one person whose discovery carries the most destructive potential. Samantha's sudden realization of their hidden tryst is nothing short of a seismic event within her own psychological landscape. It is not merely the shock of witnessing the intimacy that sends a visceral jolt of fury through her veins. It is the agonizing, immediate recognition of a profound systemic injustice that has plagued her existence within that family. For years, she has operated under a suffocating umbrella of strict moral policing, her every move scrutinized, her autonomy constantly undermined by the patriarchal figures who dictate the household's rhythm. The sight of Tyrell enjoying the very liberties that have been violently denied to her acts as a catalyst, transforming her lingering frustrations into a blazing, uncontrollable inferno of righteous anger. The betrayal she feels is absolute, a deep, wounding realization that the rules of morality and conduct in her home are entirely dependent on gender and favoritism. Driven by a blinding storm of indignation, Samantha refuses to suffer in silence, choosing instead to launch a direct, unapologetic offensive against the architects of her oppression. She corners Smitty and Martin, the air in the room instantly growing thick with the palpable tension of a long overdue reckoning. Samantha's confrontation is a masterclass in raw, unadulterated emotional warfare. She meticulously dismantles the hypocrisy of their governance, pointing out the glaring disparity in how unmonitored intimacy is treated. She demands a coherent justification for the draconian oversight applied to her own life, while Tyrell is seemingly granted a golden pass to indulge his desires without consequence. The psychological weight of her accusations hangs heavily in the room, forcing the two men to confront the ugly reality of their biased leadership. Smitty's response is a spectacular display of archaic, deeply flawed reasoning that only serves to pour gasoline on the fire of Samantha's fury. Instead of acknowledging the inherent unfairness of the situation, he retreats into the tired, defensive posture of traditional gender dynamics. He attempts to sanitize Tyrell's transgressions by framing them as a necessary component of a young man's development, arguing that his son requires a certain degree of unchecked liberty to navigate his path to maturity. This justification strikes Samantha like a physical blow, an insulting dismissal of her own need for autonomy and growth. Smitty's words solidify her agonizing belief that she is viewed as a fragile entity to be controlled, rather than an equal individual deserving of respect and freedom. Sensing the rapidly escalating volatility of the situation, Martin clumsily attempts to play the role of the diplomatic peacemaker, though his efforts ring hollow and entirely self-serving. He offers vague, bureaucratic promises of a comprehensive reevaluation of the household's internal regulations, desperately trying to pacify Samantha with the illusion of impending fairness. However, Samantha possesses an acute emotional intelligence that allows her to see right through his cowardly deflection. She recognizes Martin's promises for what they truly are, a desperate attempt to sweep the ugliness of their hypocrisy under the rug and maintain the comfortable status quo. This realization marks a chilling turning point in Samantha's psyche. The hurt daughter-seeking validation vanishes, replaced by a cold, calculating woman who understands that she is entirely alone in her fight for basic equity. The situation is further exacerbated by Tyrell's infuriatingly smug demeanor as he boldly asserts his absolute right to adult autonomy. He weaponizes his status, flaunting his independence in a manner designed to remind Samantha of her subordinate position within the familial hierarchy. This arrogant display of privilege acts as the final nail in the coffin of their sibling bond. Samantha realizes that screaming into the void of her family's prejudice is a futile endeavor. Instead, a dark, methodical determination takes root within her soul. She begins to meticulously map out a strategy not just to protest the injustice, but to systematically expose Tyrell's hypocrisies to the light of day. Her mind becomes a labyrinth of calculated maneuvers, driven by an unyielding vow to dismantle the pedestal upon which her brother so comfortably sits. While the Richardson household threatens to tear itself apart from the inside, a distinctly different, yet equally suffocating brand of tension is strangling the atmosphere at the uptown law firm. The sleek, sterile environment of the office serves as a stark contrast to the messy, terrifying secrets lurking beneath its polished surface. Tomas is operating with the relentless, predatory focus of a man obsessed, cornering Vanessa in a desperate bid to extract any lingering fragments of truth regarding the enigmatic disappearance of Lynette. The psychological pressure he exerts is immense, transforming the mundane office space into an interrogation room. Vanessa is visibly crumbling under the weight of his scrutiny. Her internal landscape a chaotic battlefield where the primal instinct for self-preservation violently clashes with the agonizing demands of her own conscience. She is a woman standing on the precipice of ruin, terrified of the consequences of speaking, yet equally haunted by the crushing guilt of her silence. The delicate, highly volatile dynamic between Tomas and Vanessa is abruptly shattered by the sudden intrusion of Donnie. Her arrival instantly alters the atmospheric pressure of the room, introducing a sharp, piercing layer of paranoia. Donnie's instincts are incredibly finely tuned, and she immediately senses the toxic, conspiratorial undercurrents swirling between her colleagues. Her questioning gaze and unspoken suspicions act as a suffocating vice around Vanessa's chest. Vanessa feels like a cornered animal trapped in a terrifying purgatory between Tomas's relentless, aggressive quest for the truth and Donnie's quiet, dangerous intuition. The walls of the law firm seem to close in on her, amplifying the echoes of her own terrifying predicament. Pushed to the absolute limits of her psychological endurance, Vanessa finally makes a desperate, agonizing decision. She agrees to a clandestine meeting with Tomas, stepping out of the shadows just enough to offer a tantalizing, yet deeply unsettling piece of the puzzle. She reveals a seemingly innocuous detail, a phone call from Lynette, made shortly before she vanished into thin air, inquiring about the process of purchasing a home. While on the surface, this information appears mundane, its implications within the context of a missing persons investigation are profoundly sinister. It suggests a woman making long-term plans, entirely contradictory to the narrative of a spontaneous disappearance. This revelation shifts the entire landscape of the mystery, injecting a cold, terrifying reality into Tomas's pursuit and leaving Vanessa even more vulnerable to the unseen forces orchestrating the chaos. Meanwhile, a seemingly ordinary moment of respite descends into an unimaginable nightmare for Bill. Sharing a quiet meal at the office with his wife, Haley, the mundane tranquility is violently ruptured by a sudden, terrifying physical crisis. A violent paroxysm seizes Bill's chest, a dark, uncontrollable hacking that tears through the silence of the room. The physical degradation is rapid and alarming, his body rebelling against him with a ferocity that leaves him gasping for air, his eyes wide with a primal, unadulterated terror. The stark contrast between the domestic normalcy of the shared lunch and the visceral horror of his failing body creates an atmosphere of profound dread. The subsequent medical evaluation delivers a psychological blow far more devastating than the physical ailment itself. The chilling diagnosis of slow, methodical poisoning introduces a level of macabre horror into Bill's existence that he is entirely unprepared to navigate. The realization that someone is deliberately, patiently orchestrating his demise shatters his fundamental sense of reality. As the paralyzing grip of paranoia takes hold, his mind races through a labyrinth of potential adversaries, eventually locking its terrifying crosshairs onto the most devastating suspect imaginable: the woman sitting across from him. The agonizing suspicion that Haley, his own wife, might be the architect of his slow execution plunges Bill into a silent, agonizing domestic warfare, where every shared meal and every comforting touch becomes a potential instrument of death. Amidst these swirling storms of betrayal and mortality, a quieter, yet profoundly deep emotional tragedy is unfolding between Nicole and Ted. The looming shadow of their approaching anniversary forces the divorced couple into an agonizing confrontation with the ghosts of their shared past. They are entirely consumed by a melancholic nostalgia, their minds wandering through the graveyard of their broken marriage. The tragedy lies in the undeniable acknowledgement of the beautiful, vibrant history they once shared, a stark and painful contrast to the fractured reality of their present. The emotional weight of their reminiscence culminates in a deeply moving embrace, a physical manifestation of grief for a love that still lingers but can no longer be sustained. It is a moment of profound vulnerability, an acknowledgement of a bond that, despite being legally severed, continues to hold their hearts in a delicate, agonizing grip. Simultaneously, the deep-seated, toxic sibling rivalry between Martin and Cott violently erupts, shattering any remaining facade of familial harmony. A lifetime of unspoken resentments and simmering jealousies boiled over into a vicious, unforgiving verbal assault. The air between them is thick with venom as they hurl deeply personal insults, each word designed to inflict maximum psychological damage. Martin, operating from a place of arrogant superiority, attempts to dismiss Cott by branding her with the label of relentless stubbornness. However, Cott, possessing an intimate knowledge of her brother's deepest flaws, strikes back with a surgical precision that leaves him entirely unmoored. Cott's accusation of hypocrisy pierces straight through Martin's carefully constructed armor, striking a raw, exposed nerve. The word hangs in the air, a damning indictment of his entire character and the very foundation of his authority. Martin's reaction is a terrifying display of a man violently unraveling. He vehemently rejects the label, his voice echoing with the desperate, furious energy of someone backed into an inescapable corner. His explosive denial only serves to highlight the fragile, crumbling nature of his ego, revealing a man who is terrified of facing the ugly truth of his own contradictions. As the younger generation tears itself apart with deceit and resentment, the patriarch of the family is forced to step into the murky, dangerous underworld to protect his bloodline. Vernon, driven by a primal, unwavering sense of duty, embarks on a desperate crusade to neutralize the threat posed by Joey. He actively hunts down the young antagonist, refusing to allow his family to be intimidated by external forces. The confrontation between the seasoned patriarch and the brazen youth is fraught with a chilling, quiet menace. Vernon expects to easily intimidate the younger man, relying on the sheer weight of his authority and presence. However, Joey is entirely unfazed by the elder's imposing demeanor. He operates with the cold, calculating confidence of a predator who has cornered his prey. In a devastating counterstrike, Joey reveals a deeply buried secret that threatens to destroy the family's financial and moral foundation: Martin's hidden, substantial debt. Joey makes it chillingly clear that he views the family not as a threat, but as a resource to be exploited, promising to extract every ounce of what he is owed. Vernon, absorbing this horrific revelation, refuses to show weakness. He delivers a stoic, terrifying ultimatum, demanding the absolute safety of his grandson. Yet, beneath his steely exterior, Vernon realizes the horrifying truth. The family is fighting a war on multiple fronts, rotting from the inside through betrayal and hypocrisy, while simultaneously being besieged by ruthless external predators. The walls are closing in, and the impending destruction seems entirely inevitable.